Well, hello there. Thanks for joining me. I am Dr. Jen, and this is My Life as a Landlord. I'm so pleased you've joined me for today's show. I don't know if you know this, but a listener of this podcast, might know by now, I like to talk. I like other people who also like to talk. Well, there's a group that all they do is help people talk. It's called Toastmasters. And while they say that most people would rather be in the coffin than giving the eulogy at the funeral, the fear of public speaking is real. Toastmasters is a great organization, and that's going to be the framework for our episode today. Now, if you've missed the first two rental roundtables with Dan Dyble and Karen Hall, they are episodes 151 and 154 in the library right now, where we conquered the topics of ethical dilemmas and landlord rights and responsibilities. But today is part three, where we're tackling economics and affordability of rentals. Welcome back, Dan and Karen.
Thank
Good to
you.
be here.
Yay. So let's introduce everybody to Toastmasters. Does one of you want to explain what Toastmasters is all about, other than people want to talk?
Well, Toastmasters is so much more than just talking. You
What do you
do
mean?
learn good communication skills in Toastmasters. You learn great listening skills, but you also develop leadership skills. When you join a Toastmasters club, you take on roles in the club. You can take on roles in the executive, and you can take on roles higher up in the areas and the districts and the division so that you learn how to organize meetings, how to organize events, how to deal with difficult people, things like that. It's so much more than just talking. Dan, did you want to add?
I find that as a business person, it really helps me stay tuned for making concise statements and for giving real-time reactions to things that happen in business meetings that come out more coherently. And I think really that's one of the biggest reasons I joined first in 1991, and it really changed how I was working as a refinery manager at that time. And that continues today as a businessman, as an entrepreneur.
Excellent. Now, just a reminder, when I joined Toastmasters way back when, they were all in-person, physically geographic
Right.
meetings. But now with the invention of Zoom, do you still have in-person meetings? Are they a blend? How do the meetings work?
It's up to the club.
Okay.
The majority now are back to meeting in person. There are some that are strictly online. I belong to two of those, and our members are across Canada and in the US. And there's also hybrid meetings where some clubs have wonderful setups. Somebody joining in a hybrid situation on Zoom is able to capture the entire meeting that's happening in the room.
My home club, my base club, is actually not only we meet in person every week. One week we meet in one city, Powell River. The other week we meet down in Coquitlam, which is probably 100 miles away. And what we get from that is not just the practice at doing in-person meetings versus the being online like this, because those speaking skills, learning to look at the camera is such a different set of skills than learning to manage a stage. Learning to manage a stage and have that camera on you is a third set of skills that becomes more and more important for people as you're working in this hybridized environment where so often you're meeting with your lawyer or your accountant or something like that, and you've got the other person that's in your real estate business at a remote location, like your location manager or your maintenance team or something like that. And you really need to make sure that people feel that they're included in your in-person meeting.
Amazing. Well, I want to thank you both again for having me speak at the Toastmasters Club called Money Matters recently. And of course, that meeting that I spoke at was all about rentals. which is exactly what we do. And so as a result, there was a table topics discussion at the meeting that was all about rentals that we didn't finish. And I said, hey, we've got all these topics, all these great topics that we can talk about. Let's make podcasts out of it. And that's what we did here. But tell us, one of you, tell us about what table topics is, and then we'll get into our discussion.
It is perfect it is practice for interviews, that proverbial elevator speech, for being in a meeting, like a council meeting, where you're trying to get a point across in a limited amount of time. So, table topics, you are given a topic and you then have to speak for at least 1 minute, but not more than two. And you must speak on it. Now, in table topics, we do allow a little bit of fun that you should not do in council meetings. We allow people to lie and fabricate. So do not do that when you're talking to your accountant, lawyers, when you're in court, when you're in business deals. Do not lie to people. But if you're coming to Toastmasters and somebody says that you're supposed to speak about the International Space Station and you know nothing about it, you can claim to be an expert, give your 1 to 2 minute talk on how oxygen and compost are combined in the space station, and then get your evaluation from that. And everything at Toastmasters is evaluated. So once you give that 1 to 2 minute talk, you will then get somebody else will evaluate you, and they will talk to you about what was your body language like? What was your intonation like? How well did your language flow? Did you say or did you pause for a moment? And things like that. So how well are you managing and developing your skills?
Love it. Absolutely love it. Perfect. Well, let's jump into the topic of housing affordability. Now, I must tell you that on this podcast, I will analyze on an annual basis both the US and the Canadian research reports that come out. And so in 2023 and 2024, Canadian Mortgage Housing Corporation's number one concern about housing was affordability, rental affordability. And I have no doubt that will still be, if not the top concern, one of the top three concerns in 2025 for both apartments and condos that are built but then rented as apartments. So there you go. That's what I think about housing affordability just off the top. It is such a white hot subject, and it's very personal. It's a very personal thing. So jumping in here, let's see. Karen, how did we do this before? Did you ask the question? Did I ask the question? Do you remember?
I believe we took turns. So one person asked
Okay.
the question and the other two answered.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'll ask the first one because I know we have three. So I'll ask the first one. So, who's going to answer first? Do we know?
Well, I don't know what the question is. Karen may know more than I do.
Okay. So here's the question. Should there be a nationwide rent cap to help prevent housing crises? Should there be a nationwide rent cap to help prevent housing crises?
I will speak first.
Okay.
Okay. I don't believe it should be nationwide. Because every area is unique. And if you set a rent cap somewhere, or like set a rent cap, and there's an area where something has happened where some things are increasing significantly, then that puts that landlord at a disadvantage that they can't recoup their costs. For example, property taxes.
Mm.
If there was a nationwide rent cap, and there are some municipalities where the rent or where the property tax increases are quite significant, 7 to 10%. While that's only a small portion of your rent, it is a portion of your rent. And that might not be recoverable in a nationwide cap. However, a provincial cap would be taking that into consideration, saying our property taxes are increasing by X amount, therefore rent increases should be limited to this. if you set a nationwide cap, areas where there's very little increase in the cost of the landlord, those landlords are going to increase the cost regardless then, whether they need it to recoup it or not. I don't think it should be nationwide, but I think provincially or even smaller geographical areas within the provinces. Dan, your
Nice.
I would
thoughts?
I would support a form of rent control. It's very important that rent stay affordable given the region that you're in. When you take a look at larger cities where rent is incredibly expensive, such as the Lower Mainland in Vancouver, it's the highest rent in Canada, I believe. And there really isn't a basis for that based on the price of real estate down there does not fit with the cost of building. But the cost of building now has gone up to the point where landlords actually do have to start charging more and more. It is the monthly increases. Where I live, it used to be that I could get 5 years ago, I could get trades for about $30 to $40 an hour. Now I'm looking at 80.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a real setback for anybody that, say, you wanted to develop your basement to rent it out. It's going to cost you about at $210 or $250 a square foot. It's going to cost you a couple of $100,000 for that. Your mortgage alone is going to be $2,500 a month. Now you still have to apportion. Your taxes are now going to go up. You have to apportion some of those taxes. You may or may not be able to separate your utilities. So your utility cost has to be built in. All of a sudden, in a town where I used to charge $1,800 for a rental house that had 3 bedrooms, now that 2 bedroom apartment in a basement is going to be about $3,000 a month. And that's at break even. So I don't know how to put a cap on that and not hurt the rental market by having people withdraw from it. I'm worried about that side. On the other hand, when I was a renter, and I know Jen, you've been both a landlord and a renter at the same time, and it is just about impossible to find a place, and therefore scarcity is what's driving the price. It's not just the cost of things, it's the what is fair market value to people and when there isn't enough housing in a region. So I would rather that the government take its time and its efforts and put it into how do we make it so that we can have enough units available to people for the expanding population at an affordable price at various price ranges. But I mean, the most at risk are the people just entering the market and exiting the market.
Dan, I completely agree. And Karen, your point made that it's very geographic dependent, especially when it comes to property taxes, insurability, repair costs, replacement costs. It's very, very physically dependent on where those rentals are located. And one other aspect is that now you have all of these long lead new construction projects that are now coming online. This is happening in Paul River. We have over 200 apartments that just came online, brand new, right next to the hospital, and they're sending shockwaves in the rental markets in Paul River, BC. And I know it's happening elsewhere as well. I have vacancies that I don't ever have vacancies, and now I have vacancies for several months where it's like, okay, again, another very geographically limited factor is now all these construction projects that were started are now coming online. People are shifting around. They want new, better, different, that kind of thing. But the question was about a nationwide rent cap. and preventing housing crises. A nationwide rent cap, for me, implies a dollar amount. And I don't know if that is the right question asking. If you said something like a nationwide rent calculation, where it was something like the consumer price index for that geographic location, I might say, you know what? Maybe that's the calculation that I could get behind. I'm still very concerned about a nationwide aspect because it seems that the national part of it is painting still with a very broad brush. Toronto, Vancouver, New York, Seattle, Dallas, these are huge places. And even their little boroughs, they still have pockets of vacancies, new construction. Surrey, downtown Surrey is just exploding with new high rises. And so all of these incredible places, the energy is very local. And so I'm really not sure that a nationwide anything is going to be applicable. The other thing is that preventing housing crises, doing something on a national level to prevent a housing crisis on a local level, something on a national level might actually spur a crisis. It might actually start a crisis. Because think about it, landlords are in business to make money. They're not going to provide a house for charity and take it at a loss if they can avoid it, right? They might take a loss for a small amount of time, for a small amount of money. But if they're forced to do something, then as Dan, you mentioned, the landlords are just simply going to sell. And so what's going to happen is then all these houses are going to go on the market for sale and the economy is going to tank. So something nationwide then spurred on a housing crisis on a local level. I don't know if there's a right answer in there. At the moment in Canada, you've got provincial calculations, right? So rent increases and things like that are all calculated on a provincial uh, location, right? BC, you can look up and say how much can I increase the rent in British Columbia in 2025, and it'll pop up and say 3%, and that's it. 3% with proper notice. You can do it once a year, and the provinces are very similar. So I'm not sure a nationwide rent cap would do anything to help or hinder housing at all. I don't think that that's the way to look at it. My take.
So what's our next question?
The next question. Karen, did
I
you want
can
to throw it out?
I can ask the next question. And Dan, I have put them in the chat. So is renting long-term a smarter financial decision than owning a home in today's market? Would you like me to repeat it? Is renting long-term a smarter financial decision than owning a home in today's market? Dan, can we go to you first?
This is actually something one of my business partners sold his house and now travels the world living on cruise ships and Airbnbs and finds it less expensive for him than when he was living in Anchorage, Alaska. That said, that wouldn't be true for me. I did the calculation last week and I took a look at it because my house is paid for. I now sit in it. And one of the things I will say to people is do not use your house as an investment if you think of it about if you're thinking about your portfolio, unless you've done this calculation to check out what rent would cost you as an alternative. Because if you are thinking of your house as a way to, as an investment, the way that you think of stocks, then that's a fallacy. We should get into that in another talk, Jen, and just talk about the how you look at a piece of real estate when you're an owner. Your house can generate revenue for you. If you choose to, you can go through the throes of having Airbnb with all the pluses and minuses of that. You have more freedom as a renter. I like the idea that Karen today had to say, I got to close my windows because someone's doing the lawn for me. And I've got my tractor out in the back and I'm restructuring my property. I'm fortunate to have that capability. So I look at it and I say that's very, very specific to each person. and to what your goals are, your lifestyle goals. It's so much easier. If I was in Karen's position when she takes off and does one of her cruises, Karen loves cruising. She's an expert if anybody ever wants advice. But getting out and taking a cruise, she doesn't have to do anything other than someone to take care of her dog, whereas I have to worry about whether my insurance, did the hydro get turned off? What about the water? I have to have somebody coming over inspecting the house every so many days for my policy and things like that. So whether it's smarter depends on the lifestyle objectives that you've got and what you want to be doing with your money, because sometimes you can make more money depending on the housing market you're in. You can make more money in another place than you can in real estate. Real estate in Powell River was flat or decreasing over a 20 or 30-year period. It's only recently done a slight uptick. And so, really, buying this house wasn't a good investment if I was trying to monetize things. I wanted a stable place where I was allowed to drive a bolt in the wall or renovate the house, do a new kitchen, things like that, without having to get permission from someone. So that was my choice. But if I was smart, I would have just come here and rented, because rent used to be dirt cheap here. And relative to other places, it still is.
Mm-hmm.
How about you guys?
I'll jump in. So the question is renting long-term a smarter financial decision than owning a home in today's market? And Dan, I completely agree with you. It depends on the individual. If someone's going to live anywhere long-term, that's their choice to stay there long-term, whether it's weather or geographic location, or their kids are in school and they want to make sure that they stay in the same school pipeline until they graduate, or university or college or whatever it is. There is something geographically keeping that person there. And then the question is, does it make smarter sense to rent or to buy? Renting, you're exactly right, Dan. It gives the person freedom where it's, you're not locked in. You can be in a lease for a year. You could shift around, you could move, you could go into a different borough location within that same city. You could be renter. And if the fridge craps out, guess what? Then you call your property management company or your landlord and you say, "Hey, my fridge isn't working. I need a new fridge, or I need to have it looked at." Whatever. The point is that the maintenance and the grass cutting, the tree trimming, all of that is taken care of. But is it cheaper? Is it better long-term financial sense? At the interest rates that are happening today, now, of course, we were in an upswing. Now things look like they might be coming down a bit. There's a question mark about interest rates. There's a question mark about how banks and credit unions are looking at stress testing and for income qualification for people to even get in. Because then, of course, once you become a homeowner, the fridge craps out, guess what? There's no one to call. You have to deal with it yourself. If your roof leaks, you have to deal with it yourself. And so there's a question there of, it depends. It depends on what is your long-term goal. If your long-term goal is to pay one price per month and just be able to call someone and not have to worry about it, but ask permission if you can start hanging pictures or put a TV on the wall, things like that, then be a renter. But if you want some potential appreciating asset, as depending on your local market, most of the time real estate appreciates, but then you're responsible for your own stuff as a homeowner. It depends, and that's how I'll maintain it.
I'm going to agree. It depends. What are your long-term goals? If you are planning on staying in that residence, I believe 7 years is the number of years that I've heard. It could be 5 for that period or longer. It is probably smarter to buy the home. When I bought my first home, my mortgage payments and my property taxes and insurance, well, forget the insurance because I would have had to have insurance as a renter, but those things were slightly higher than if I had gone to rent. Staying in that home for 10 years, at the end of 10 years, yes, my mortgage payments had fluctuated a bit and my property taxes had gone up, but my payments were not significantly higher than they had been 10 years ago. However, as a renter, if I had stayed in the same location, it probably would have equaled out. But it's very difficult for somebody to rent in the same location for that long period of time.
Hmm.
Circumstances change. Your landlord sells the house and wants vacant possession, things like that. And you go to move and your rent is up. Anytime you're moving, your rent is increasing. If you're able to stay in the same place and are subject to the rental restrictions of BC, 3% a year right now, then it probably equals out. But if you're planning on moving or have to move, as a renter, you're at a loss. However, if you have a lifestyle where you might be moving frequently, or you're only planning on staying for a few years and then moving somewhere else, then renting makes more sense. But if you're planning on staying long term, in my opinion, buying is the better decision financially.
Oh my goodness. Talking about rental affordability is so sobering because it's a very present discussion, right? It's very present. It's my paycheck is this. It's actually money in my bank account right now, and my rent is this. And I mean, it's very sobering. Yeah.
I have a friend that I play cards with, who she was renting. The person that she was renting from passed away, and the family has sold the house, and so they've told her she has to move. The cheapest she could find was
Hmm.
about 75% more than what she had been paying. And so it
Yeah.
was very, yes, because she
No,
had for
it's
so long. Yes.
well, that's a perfect segue into our last question, Karen. And I'll take the first crack at this one because this is the world that I live in too. And here's the question. Are landlords contributing to the housing affordability crisis, or are they just playing the system? Are landlords contributing to the affordability crisis, or are they just playing the system? So I think that it depends on the landlord. I think it depends on the landlord. And for the listeners out here who are listening to this podcast, if you're mindful enough to want to educate yourself, very likely you are not contributing to the affordability crisis. You're actually being mindful and educating yourself, and you are playing by the system. You're actually educating, you're reading tenancy laws, you're actually trying to do as good as you possibly can. And honestly, provide the best product that you can. Now, there's another extreme on that spectrum, and that's what I call a slumlord. A slumlord is someone who just has the houses and the rental units for the sake of money, and they don't care necessarily about the tenants, they don't care about the buildings, they just want the money. And are they contributing to the housing affordability crisis? Maybe not specifically about the affordability crisis, maybe about the quality of life crisis. But I don't, I really take offense when someone calls me a slumlord. And I snap back hard because I don't like being called a slumlord. I'm not a slumlord. I take great pride in my tenants. I work very hard to remain engaged and provide a great product. And we provide great units at market rate. Are we contributing to affordability crisis? No. But is inflation, is interest rates, is the world, is currencies, crypto? I mean, we could just go on and on and on. Am I personally contributing to it? No. But am I a part of the economy that is resulting in the money squeeze that's happening globally? Yeah, I am because I'm a human and I happen to have housing. So it's just a matter of, are you playing the system? I don't know if it's playing, but I'm playing by the rules because I know the rules. I understand the rules and I play them very well. And then, of course, then the rules change. So I think it just depends on the landlord itself, the landlord themselves. Hmm. Who's next?
I'll, I'll jump in next. There are some landlords that are contributing to the housing affordability crisis. Um, I have heard of cases where landlords will find some way to get rid of a tenant because they're long-term tenants. And they won't evict them, but they'll make it so uncomfortable for them that that person or family feels that they have no choice but to move. And then the landlord can now rent it out at a significantly higher cost.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no additional expenses to the landlord in the meantime because of that. However, if you're someone who has purchased property and have, say, for example, you have a suite that you're renting out. When you're purchasing that property, you're keeping in mind that you're going to get X amount for rent. With the housing crisis that we have, with the increase in affordability of houses, those new landlords now are going to want to have higher rents because their mortgage costs are significantly higher. The cost of housing in Metro Vancouver has raised significantly. 10 years ago, I moved from Metro Vancouver to Vancouver Island. I sold my house for, I'm going to say 475,000. That same house today is 1.1 million.
Mm.
If I was somebody buying it at 525 and had room to rent in it, of course, I don't need to recoup as much as, for to pay my mortgage. Buying it at 1.1 million, yes, I have to recoup a lot more. So is it the landlord contributing to the affordability crisis, or is it the market? I agree with you. There are slumlords who are definitely contributing towards it, but overall, I don't think it's the landlords themselves, it's the market.
Mm.
Yeah.
For me, I look at a component of being a landlord is the risk that you're taking on. And when I look at, I entered the housing market back in the late 70s, just as interest rates went from 7% to 19%. And for those of us who had bought a house and were expecting, we got a 3-year mortgage at, I think, 8%, and our renewal was going to be at 12 because of Alberta Treasury Branch allowing us to do that. If we had gone to the bank, it was another 3%. And I look at that and I go, that drove the cost of rent up more than anything else. And the one thing I don't see is when the interest rates go from very high down to low, I don't see rents coming down. What I see driving rents down is, as Jennifer pointed out, when the market looks and it's there's undersupply, and then all of a sudden there's a huge shift in supply, either to market so that everybody has a place or beyond. And in our town, as she mentioned, we are a town with, I think, 20,000 people. And to have 400 new units, I think, is the total that are coming on starting a year ago to 2 years from now. That's going to be huge, absolutely huge. So I think as much as anything, what's driving affordability is supply and demand. And I think a lot of demand is artificially driven up in the real estate market based on the financial market. So when you see really good returns on the stock market, you'll see housing prices going up because that's the money's not there, so the units aren't getting built. And it's really that pushes it. I believe that most landlords go in with a plan, but they have to have that buffer because if their mortgage goes up, my mortgage right now, if I went out, would probably be about 3% more than the last mortgage I paid. And if I was still paying for my house, having my mortgage double, which is basically what would be happening, and I'm only allowed to raise the rent 3%, I'm going to be really tempted to want to get those tenants out because otherwise I'm losing money on my investment. And then I'm going to lose my house, which is put up as collateral and so on. So for me, it's more the financial markets that are driving interest rates and fluctuating things there. And at that point, I would go back to a national policy that allows something to go back to the first question. If you're going to have, I'm a libertarian, so I'm not into government intervention, but if I was going to have something, then that's where I would want to have the government doing something to mediate things. And I've got nieces and nephews who are out in the rental market. One of my godsons has just moved to Calgary because the rent is affordable there, because he can afford a house there. So rather than taking the job he was offered in Vancouver, he's taken the one that's on, and it's about housing. It's strictly about affordability of housing. And if you're not mobile, you're stuck. And my heart goes out to those people. But also as a landlord, you bought an asset and you can't move it. It's not mobile. So you need to be ready for those shocks. And we should do, Jen, let's get somebody in and have a chat with one of the people from a credit union or a bank to talk about what that shock testing is about that you referred to in the introduction. I think that would be a really good talk for us to have.
I actually already have it in the library.
I'd forgotten that. That's right. That was, yeah, that was a while ago.
Yep, it is
Yeah.
a while ago. No, that's good. Well, thank you both. I love doing the table topic questions and having a conversation like this is really fun. And I want to keep that conversation going because, of course, this is part 3 of a 5-part uh, rental roundtable. And so we'll have you guys back on very soon to continue with part 4. And it'll be another aspect of rentals. And yeah, if a listener is interested in knowing more about Toastmasters or joining a Toastmasters club, how would they do that?
Go to Toastmasters International. And there's a place where you can go find a club and you can determine how many in Canada, kilometers, in the US, miles, England would be miles, and so on. But you can say that, then you can also say whether you want them to be online, in person. You can look at meeting frequency. You can determine what day of the week, what time of the day, because some clubs meet in the morning, some are lunch clubs, and then some are work clubs where you are meeting within your organization. And in those ones, it's really handy because then you're learning about how to communicate within a given cultural context, the culture of your company.
Fantastic. Karen, any parting thoughts?
I would just like to say that I really am enjoying these sessions and I am learning a lot listening to both of you responding in regards to Toastmasters. Well, we are part of a club called Money Matters that meets
Yes.
Pacific Standard Time, 2 Mondays
Mondays.
Mondays at 6:30. If you're free on a Monday evening, 7:30 Pacific Time, look us up, Money Matters Toastmasters. We would love to have you join us.
6:30 Pacific time
Yes.
starting.
Beautiful.
And just go into Google, type in Money Matters Toastmasters. You'll find us. You have to reach out to us in advance. This is not something you can do last minute because of Zoom bombers, but do reach out to us. One of us will respond. We'll get you a link and you can come and join us. We love to have guests and come not only as a guest to learn, but if you would like to come and speak about something as Jennifer did, then we're happy to have people come and talk about anything money because money does matter and money
Awesome.
matters.
so great to have you guys back on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care.